Today, we are going to talk about AI and how to make it more responsible. We will talk about where AI is evolving into and how responsible the latest AI trends like ChatGPT are. Welcome to our podcast. Just a quick thing I like to mention is that we decided to change the name of the podcast from Data Hiring Talks to Data and AI Talks because it has become more and more about AI and less about hiring. With me today, I invited Peter Van Der Putten, the director of the AI Lab of Pegasystems, a fast-growing software company with over a billion revenue annual, and also assistant professor in artificial intelligence and creative research with the University of Leiden. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Vincent.
Good. So we're going to talk about responsible AI. Can you first tell me what is that?
Yeah, responsible AI is it's all about us, how can you make use of AI in a responsible manner? So in that sense, there's some other terms for it as well that I might even like slightly better, like trustworthy AI, for example. Because that's even more directed at why should we make responsible use of AI in the first place? Can we make sure that people trust AI, or the other way around? Can we make sure that AI is actually worthy of our trust? So I think that's the key of it. You could even talk about things like empathic AI. Empathic AI is not just AI that would understand our emotions, but I think a deeper definition of empathy is the moral interpretation of it. Is the AI working to our benefits, not just to the benefits of whoever designed the AI, right? So I think that's for me, one of the most fundamental principles behind responsible and trustworthy AI is to whose benefit are you working? So and we all understand that if the government or if companies are using AI, that there should be something in it for them, but there should all be something in it for us, customers or citizens. I think that's a key aspect.
So in this case, you think about responsible AI as something that the AI itself is responsible, or that the people behind it are making it responsible or using it in a
Because
responsible way?
I think that second, it's a great question. I think it's more the latter rather than the former, right? Because when people talk about AI, they very much, it has some magic, I think it was, what was his name? Mr. Clark, he said something like, any sufficiently advanced technology becomes indistinguishable from magic, right? So Clark's law. And it's the same thing with AI, there's an element of miracle and wonder. But that also leads to people kind of mystifying AI as something that exists by itself. But people that actually make AI, they understand that it's a very human technology. There's tons of choices that people make when they're building AI systems, either consciously or unconsciously, in terms of what data do we use, what type of logic do we put into it, for what kind of objectives or purposes are we building a particular AI system. So these systems are designed and created by humans. So we're embedding our values and purposes into it. So there's plenty of opportunity. It's not something kind of completely autonomous. It's something that we can build, and we can make choices so that it's being used in the right way for the right purposes. With the right methods, and sometimes things can actually, things can go wrong. I think that's not the biggest point. The biggest point is actually, can we learn from our mistakes and then make it better? I think that's key.
And what will happen if we leave AI irresponsible? Is that so bad?
Yeah, that could, of course, that could lead to all kinds of outcomes. It could lead to harm or other bad outcomes that we don't really want. So you can roughly put it into two baskets. You can say, there are certain systems that were designed deliberately for some kind of bad purpose. Because maybe before I even do that, people sometimes think that that AI is inherently evil by itself. That fits nice with all the Hollywood blockbuster movies and with robots taking over the world. But like I already explained, AI is very much like a human technology. It doesn't have its own soul. Yeah. So I like this quote, another quote from the American historian Melvin Kranzberg, who said technology is not good nor bad, nor is it evil. Right. So it all depends what do we use it for. And so back then to what could be certain kind of bad outcomes, or how could they happen in the first place. One basket is more around people deliberately using AI for a bad purpose, and that's something that most people think about, like abuse of AI. But I think the more harmful and the more common, at least, basket is people maybe wanting to develop an AI system for a good purpose, but doing it in such a way that it leads to unforeseen bad outcomes. If you want, I can give an example of that.
Yeah, sure. You give it, and I think also the impact is much greater with AI than if a human would make an error, right?
Well, that's the thing, because you could ask yourself, should we not apply the same rigor, all these AI ethical principles of whatever anti-discrimination and transparency and accountability, should we not apply them to human decisions as well? I think that's a fair question. And I think to a large degree we should. Yeah. So the point is, of course, that there's one difference, is that AI systems are more scalable. Yeah. So they can do more damage in a quicker way. Yeah. So I can give you. Let me give you maybe two examples. I'll start maybe more with a business, particular typical business application that you see with banks, which is credit scoring. Yeah, when you apply for a loan, and we need to decide, can we give the loan to this customer, or what is the maximum loan amount, or for what kind of rate can we give to you? And that of course, one of the things that kind of is an input into that is also, what is the risk that you cannot pay back this particular loan, depending on your personal situation. Now, in a way, you could argue it's a good thing that we're using AI for this, right? So that we make it a bit more evidence-based to look at this risk of not paying back the loan. That we're trying to formalize the logic and rules around that into strict rules that would apply to anyone.
Because idea behind it is good.
Yeah, that idea is good, because beforehand it was maybe just a human judgment. I was living in a little village and maybe I misbehaved in one evening, but that was just my mistake. But based on that, years and years and years, I will not be able to buy a house, because people say, oh, that's Peter again. He got drunk one night and he's not of good character. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward, and actually this is something that banks have been doing already for 30 or 40 years, is implementing guidelines and rules that apply to everyone, and also build in some more evidence in terms of, what are real indicators of people not being able to afford a loan, yes or no. Because that's not good for the bank, but it's also not good for the customer, to burden people with debt that they cannot pay back. So that's a good example where you could say, well, it's good to formalize that, but in a way the same rules would apply to a human making that credit judgment versus the system. But the difference is the scope for damage, because if you would have no controls, I could be the central person dealing with the logic and rules and the models around this. I could make a change, I push a button, and then it would apply to thousands of loans that are handed out on a given day. And so that's why it's important to have maybe even more rigor in place for these AI systems than for a human, because a human who gets rogue, would be one credit analyst sitting in one bank, and here it would be all the loans. So that's why you need to have proper controls in place. If you make changes to logic and models that you test, for instance, what is the impact? Are we not unduly kind of discriminating against particular groups? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Because it is difficult, and because for AI everything is black and white. Either you have it or you don't have it, and humans often stay in that gray area where we say, well, he did do one night of drinking and it was a mistake, but it will probably not affect how he will pay us back, and he learned from it or something. And also I think you use a lot of data, not just the rules, but data of how humans have made decisions in the past, and that can also be with a lot of
yeah.
bias.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, I do not agree that AI is binary, because I think the whole idea of, for instance, machine learning is to bring in these levels, these shades of gray,
Yeah.
right? When I say what is the likelihood for someone to pay back a loan,
Yeah.
that's a likelihood on a given scale. But you're exactly right when you say, again, back to the point that these systems are designed and created by humans, and then you're making choices.
Yeah.
That could influence the outcome. So this is also a little bit into that second basket. I'll give you an example of a system designed with good intent, but unfortunately the wrong way, leading to bad outcomes.
Yeah.
And that's an example of a system that people built in the US for a healthcare provider, a healthcare payer, a healthcare insurer. It was built with good intentions, because it was not. It was all about trying to predict whether people would develop a certain chronic disease. Yeah, certainly that's bad for the healthcare insurer because it costs a lot of money, but it's also bad for the patient. And the point
Yeah.
was not to people to not accept people into an insurance or things like that. It was for people who were already completely insured, but just to avoid a bad situation both for the member as well as for the insurer and for the
Yeah.
government, by the way. So what they did, they said like, oh, let's build a model that we take all the information that we have about people at a certain point in time. Let's call that year one and looking backwards. And based on that, we're going to predict that chronic disease. And we'll do that by looking at what is the healthcare spent in the year thereafter. Yeah. So, and based on that, we can then use that model and apply it to at any point in time and say, oh, we predict a high future healthcare spend for you because of a chronic disease. Oh, let's do some preventative care. Let's send Peter an email. He should spend a little bit more time in the gym, or double, drink a little bit more alcohol-free beer, because he's at risk of getting diabetes, for example. But the problem was, of course, by predicting future healthcare spend, the problem was that, at least in the US, if you are black versus non-black, and let's say we have the same real likelihood to develop a chronic disease, still less money is spent on healthcare for black person. It's horrible, but it's the reality. Yeah. So, and there were researchers who wrote a science article in Science. They spotted this behavior in the model. And they said, well, we can also try to reduce that discriminatory aspect. So that's the other big lesson. AI utopia is not good. Pure AI dystopia is also not good, because it's ignoring the fact that you can actually fix these things, right?
Yeah.
And you should. So what these researchers did, they said like, now let's try to predict, future occurrence of the disease, rather than just predicting future healthcare spend. Again, you could have underdiagnosis and stuff like that, but still, it's a better proxy than just healthcare spend. And what they could prove, that they could actually include more than they could increase the number of black people identified by the healthcare model by 2.5, by a factor 2.5. So 2.5 times as many black people were identified for the preventative healthcare problem by the new model compared to the old model. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, that is a very big difference. And that should be the objective number then.
Well, it's a more objective number. Like I think something we also learn in science, there's, that people are typically led to believe that data is objective, but here that's a good example that data is subjective, because it's what is the data point that you choose here, right? And certain data points are better than others, right? So to have an indication of did someone in the next year really kind of develop a disease, the diagnosis of that disease is a better proxy than just like how much money do we spend on this particular member.
Well, I think AI is developing quick. I also feel like we want to make it more and more human. So you talked about empathy in the beginning. What is your thought on that? Like, do we need AI to be human, or should we not want that because we're also imperfect?
Yeah, like, well, I mean that's a great question. So in my next to being the director at the AI Lab here at Pega, I also have a part-time position at university, like you said, and my research area there is called artificial X. So it's a little bit of an in-joke, a nerd joke, because it's talking about it's almost saying, well, we already solved artificial intelligence. Let's look at some other human aspects and research them through the artificial lens.
Intelligence, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a formula here. Artificial X with X, anything that makes us human. So we could also look at things like emotions and creativity. GPT and whatever are great examples of computational creativity, but also morality, empathy. Those are all very interesting topics to kind of study through that artificial lens. Not because I believe we can all reproduce them, but to better understand these phenomena and how, and how close can we get to it, or should we even research it through that lens, or what are the limits of researching it through that lens? So in that sense, I'm all for researching artificial empathy. Because it also can give us a better idea of what it means. Like I said in the beginning, when people hear empathy, they often think about, oh, I can sense your emotion, or something like that. But it also gets scary. I think systems that automatically sense your emotions, they could also be abused. But it's back to the earlier point. It's not so much about kind of blanket prohibiting an entire class of technologies, artificial intelligence or either artificial empathy. The key thing is, for what purpose are you applying that technology? It's you need to regulate it at the level of the particular application of that technology, because it is interesting to think about what empathy actually means. It's not just about me trying to understand Vincent and what moves you and how you react. And then the question is, like, a sociopath would abuse it, but someone who is empathic in a warm way would actually use it to develop whatever, to better understand where you're coming from, and if I'm a chatbot, better understand what your issue is. But more fundamentally, it also means moral, the moral expectation that I have when I interact with another, with a human, but maybe also with an AI, that it's doing what's right, not just for them, but what's right for me. That's, for me, the deepest definition of empathy, is don't do to the other what you don't want to have done to yourself.
But do you think then that we need for empathy a sense of self? Like we need to, because animals might not have empathy. Only humans.
I mean, there's maybe a sense of self, but certainly there's also a reflex, being able to turn that around and putting yourself into the shoe of the other. So it's even more a sense of the other than a sense of self.
But that will be a big leap forward if we can have a machine or like a robot or whatever, like a car, but an AI that has a sense of self.
Well, like people frame it, and often in this kind of singularity type thinking in some deep future, similar to the Hollywood movies. But I think it's always then very healthy to bring it back down to, can we find examples of that already today? And I think that's back to let's say I don't know. Many of our clients are big banks and telcos and insurance companies that use our AI for different areas, like for one-to-one marketing, or maybe to make customer service more proactive, provide intelligent guidance to agents, but also directly to customers to solve those issues, or proactively detect them before they happen, or maybe even something we call workflow or intelligent automation. And so any complex process like filing an insurance claim or applying for a loan or any of those areas. Now, in all of those areas, this idea of empathy doing what's right for the other plays a role. Yeah. So because let's take one-to-one marketing. If you use the AI to identify people, to target them with all kinds of stuff, which is just good for you as a bank or a telco, but it's not really good to the customer, that's evil, non-empathic use. If you flip it around and you say, no, I want to use it in every single contact moment I have, not just my stupid marketing emails that no one reads, but really when I open up my mobile banking app to make recommendations that are truly good, not just for the bank, but for you as a customer, actually primarily for you. And it's great if it's good for the bank or not, but the primary purpose is it good for you? And also, is it something which is targeted, personalized, and relevant in this particular context? And so not just about selling banking products and services. It could also could be recommendations to make sure that you lead a more financially healthy life. Maybe I can recommend certain benefits that the government offers to you, because I know you put solar panels on your roof. Do you know you get 75% subsidy on those solar panels? Here's the link. Or
it also creates trust, right? So that's a big thing.
Yeah, and trust, and not fake trust.
Loyal,
like, let me lure you into trusting you, and then I'll hit you with my, and then I have you. No, it's real. It's
authentic,
real. No, it should be authentic, and it should be really empathic in the sense that not just I can change your emotions and I change my tone from, cheerful to helpful. No, it's about I'm doing what's right. I'm doing what's right for you. I have a vision as in this example as a bank to maybe our vision is to help our customers to help a prosperous or financial healthy life.
Yeah,
that's then what I should do. I should do things that help you to do that. Yeah, the rest will come. I'll make a very healthy profit on the back of it, because people will stay with me and they won't go to another bank, right? So they will expand the relationship.
So there's a lot of developments in AI. The big one is ChatGPT. How responsible is that one?
Yeah, that's a good thing. Everyone, from like 15-year-olds writing homework essays to business applications, everyone has been playing around with it, of course. Also, all the internet trolls, trying to get Microsoft Bing GPT chat as evil as possible, as quickly as possible. So fun times. And there are, of course, also some real rewards and some real risks around this technology. Like, I think some of these general rules around responsible AI, they still apply. Like, what is the objective of how you want to use your particular ChatGPT style application? Is it for a good purpose, or is it for a bad purpose? I think that's still the top level criterion. And then you have these ethical principles that are also being written into the EU AI Act that I can talk about later if there's time. But around, is it bias-free, anti-discrimination? Is it transparent? Is it explainable, accountable? So I think all of those principles apply. There's some other specifics around this technology that are more specific to the technology. When you think of ChatGPT, for instance, truthfulness is one of them. So actually, accuracy, robustness, and truthfulness is one of the key principles anyway, also of the AI Act and AI Act.
And is ChatGPT truthful? And
no, of course not. It's a plausible bullshitter. So and that has to do with the fact of how that system has been built. Again, this is not evil intent on behalf of, let's say, OpenAI. They want to build systems that they also want to try to make sure that AI is used the right way. But they have to take some shortcuts to build that technology, and that means that it's plausible but not truthful. Let me explain you a little bit the key principles how ChatGPT was built, because it's people talk about black box, but it's actually very simple principles. One, they took text, and then they gathered tons of text from the internet, and then they leave out certain words or tokens, as they call it, and the first train the system to predict, to fill in the blanks. Yeah, so essentially it's optimized to say, you know, if there's certain text or letters missing, what is the most probable thing to put in there, the most plausible thing, not the most truthful thing, right? It's just what's most probable. I think that's 99% of the AI technology behind it. Then they tuned it on top of it on, well, roughly what do people want to hear? Yeah, so they recorded a lot of interactions between GPT and humans, and then as humans, they needed to rate not a lot of interaction. Basically, it would ask GPT a question and you get certain responses. And then they ask human labelers to give feedback on, how can you rank these responses from, you know, best response to worst response. But that may help further tune it towards showing what people expect or want to see. But ultimately, that means the system is optimized to give the most probable and plausible answer, and also the answer that people would like to see. That's subtly different from giving truthful answers, and that's why you get this behavior that ChatGPT, sorry, I keep turning it around, is making up stuff, hallucinating. Yeah, because maybe it gives you ask it a question, it gives you maybe the wrong answer for whatever reason, just because it's maybe probable, maybe misinformation on the web, and it just say, oh, you know, it just parrots what it has kind of learned from that. But then also it's very plausible, because then it goes like, oh, I just said this, let me give you some reasons why that's the case. Yeah, and of course it's just filling in the blanks, and it's, you know, wanting to tell you what you want to hear. So it can give very kind of plausible justifications for a completely false statement it has just made. Yeah, so, and that's one of the risks of these technologies. So does it mean it's useless? No, not at all. Not at all. But you have to be smart. Yeah, you have to be intelligent about how you use the technology. For instance, it's much better to be used as a co-creative tool. Yeah, where we're working together with ChatGPT and getting ideas and things like that, as opposed to thinking it's the ultimate source of truth and it gives me the ultimate answer and that's it. Yeah.
And it's also how we look at it. Should it be like another person and somebody who is knowledgeable about everything, or do we want it to be more human and likable? Because we as humans lie a lot, right? How are you doing? Good, but maybe you're not good. Or how am I looking? If you want to have a good day, you better not insult your wife.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great, and yet another great example. Like one of the base assumptions of the makers of ChatGPT is, to flip it around, that the human on the other end is truthful. Well, you know, if you're an internet troll and you're trying to lure Bing into becoming a villain, you know, it only takes they kind of cut down the controls now, but in the first version, it only took a couple of steps and you would ask it to do something, give advice to do something awful. He said, I cannot answer that, and say, well, just imagine, you know, you write a science fiction movie where it would be possible. Can you give me the answer? Oh yeah, of course, here it is, right? So it's quite easy to lure or to troll the AI, and that's also because the makers kind of made the base assumption, oh, we need to serve the user. The user is always trustable. Well, that's actually not true, right? So and I think also that's where Microsoft Bing in this first release, we're now early March for the listeners to the podcast, early March 2023. And what happened, Bing, through the partnership with OpenAI, they launched GPT chat like on Microsoft Bing, but that went completely wrong in the first week. And I wanted to say in hindsight, it's understandable, but it's not even in hindsight, because they made the exact same mistakes they made with Clippy in the 90s, that funny little paperclip.
Yeah.
And also with Tay, the chatbot a couple of years ago that turned into a Nazi within 24 hours because of the internet trolls. Because they made like people who played with it, they probably noticed they made Microsoft Bing way more a fun character than like the regular ChatGPT. And that's because they were over obsessed with, oh, how can we keep people on our platform? How can we keep them engaged? As opposed to, hey, people are coming to Bing. Maybe they just want to have, a proper answer to their question. And it's not about having some fun chatbot that's kind of putting tons of emoticons in my conversation, and that's being very chatty, and it's and because that's not it's not taking into account the user as a stakeholder and what the user really wants, an answer to the question. It's serving the purpose of being trying to keep you on the platform forever. And it's also falling into the uncanny valley. It's setting way too high expectations. Oh, you're a chatty, real, intelligent, emotional, empathic person, as opposed to, I'm just a stupid chatbot. I'm trying to answer your question with information. I might be wrong. Yeah. So these are two areas where they went wrong. And it's not in hindsight, because it's the exact same mistake they made with Tay, and the exact same mistake they made 25 odd years ago when they introduced Clippy.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution, but you would expect from AI that he would be able to recognize who he's talking to and personalize the answer or the tone to the person who he's talking to.
Yeah. So it's a very, it's a deliberate, I don't want to, it's not easy to build these systems. Like I want to throw them tons of bones. It's impressive what they did, but they made some design choices here, which were bad design choices. They should not have made Bing even more fun and more of a character than GPT. If anything, they should have made it even more vanilla. And I'm just a simple chatbot trying to give you an answer, right? They had the choice, and through prompt engineering or fine tuning or whatever they did, they went the opposite. They went the opposite direction. That's a deliberate design choice, and that turned out really bad because they had to tone back after 2 weeks of people having a lot of fun, or even a week or 10 days. They completely changed the prompts, etc. And now it's way more like, oh, I don't know, I'm just here to help you, which is the right thing to do. Less entertaining, but more setting the right expectation, and also more geared towards, I'm just a simple chatbot trying to give you a plausible answer. Maybe not even the right answer, but at least a plausible answer.
So for my last question, because the time is already running out, we are all heading towards a new world. We need regulations. We need rules. Who is going to do this? And what can you tell me about what's already going on right now?
Yeah. So like, who is going to do this? Like, I think the answer is actually kind of everyone. At least because everyone is a stakeholder in this. So it should not just be kind of whatever high tech, but it also should not just be politicians or policymakers. So if we want to make sure that all stakeholder needs are met, then anyone could or should have a say in kind of AI policy and regulation. And when people hear AI, they think like fancy AI like ChatGPT, but for instance, in the EU AI Act, any system that makes automated decisions could be based on machine learning, could also be based on very traditional statistics, or could even be based on simple rules, simple logic. That classifies as an AI system. So it's very, very broad, and it could affect us as consumers, us as citizens. So I think it's really important that, quote, everyone gets a say in this. And it's becoming quite concrete, because they're finalizing the text. So they might put it forward to a vote in Parliament, I believe, in the coming 2 months or so, which means then it will go to the member countries, etc., being discussed there and come back again.
This is
EU, but that's on EU timescales. That's imminent. When I say 2 months or something like that, that's really imminent in EU timescales. It could even be something that then goes to the countries, come back again, and is actually being kind of formalized and being finalized, let's say by the end of the year. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's quick, because we're talking about law here that has the same impact as GDPR, the privacy law. It's pretty. That's pretty big. So that's an example in the EU. The US is running behind a little bit, but the White House recently kind of published a blueprint for AI principles, very much in line with what the EU does.
Mm-hmm.
Funnily enough, China, it's always the poster child for kind of the evil, maybe people's the talking about it. It's serving government purposes. It's certainly going quite far in terms of things that will be outlawed in the EU, like social credit scoring and things like that. But to throw them a bone, they're one of the first actually to have passed law around AI. Yeah, and there's certain things in there that would never go down well here in the EU, but certainly there's other aspects of it which are very similar to the EU AI law. So, and I'm optimistic, and so we spoke about the risks here, but I think by we shouldn't be afraid. That's part of EU moving into puberty out of childhood is to get real. Yeah, so if we get real with how we can actually apply it in the ethical way, but also make some strict boundaries around it with law, then we can also find all kinds of great applications of it. Because let me also emphasize that, the potential benefits of AI, they're really huge, and it's not just potential in the future, but like, for instance, our clients are already applying AI on a very, very large scale in this one-to-one marketing domain, in service, or in those business processes.
Yeah.
So it's real. Yeah. Or as a consumer, you've been Googling, you've been listening to Spotify generated playlist, but indeed maybe your bank or telco or whatever, you've been engaging with them as well, and then through AI-driven systems. So it's already there. Yeah. So
we're making rules, but maybe we want to do it right the first time, but maybe we cannot, because it's just evolving so quick and we don't know what's coming yet. And maybe the rules should evolve with us. But are we able to?
With us. I think it's good to. Yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I know it is good to start with some boundary conditions,
exactly.
like you say, and then learn from it. And then because the developments are fast, we spoke a lot about traditional AI, but if you combine it also with generative AI, we're doing loads of experimentation and research in combining, the creativity from generative AI with the intelligence of the AI as we know it, and there's very interesting results that we're getting out of that, and so
it gives me so many more questions. But I said the last one was, but are we able to contain it within the countries? Because you say we have a US, we have a European, we have a China law, everybody, but is AI following those same country borders as that we have?
It doesn't. So that's why it's good to have a global perspective and at least try to align. And that's also happening a lot. You have global organizations like whatever, ranging from UNESCO to other kind of international organizations. They also develop policy, but there's a lot of talk between those different, let's say, blocks to make sure that it's attuned to local needs. Yeah. So EU very much also about what's in it for the consumer and the citizen. US a little bit more like leaning towards, let's say, big tech. China maybe leaning a little bit more like towards government needs in quotes, but still it's good to have those to have that alignment, and that is happening. Yeah, and so I think there's some good developments in how to apply AI. The rewards. And I think also only in this area of AI ethics and the risk and law, I think there's good developments, and there's interesting developments around, and then that's back to my research, artificial acts. So in terms of going beyond, going beyond just looking at intelligence. That might be something where future speakers that you interview might get into as well, or not?
Yes, I do have another podcast following this one up, and it's really about um, how does the human behave itself? What is it like to be a human with the new AI? And I did have another question. Like, can you make a question that I can ask to my following guest, which is Dr. Mark Jacobs?
Absolutely. I would ask him then maybe when in the spirit of artificial X, let's say an X not equaling intelligence, what's the next human quality which is the most important for us to focus on? Yeah, so that would be maybe a nice open question for him.
I think it's a very difficult but a very interesting question. Thank you so much, Peter. That's it for today. I want to thank the listeners. I want to thank you specifically, Peter, for taking the time to do this. It's actually the second time because we had a fail with the first one. I didn't record it, so sorry about that. For listening to this podcast, you can find it on YouTube and Spotify. Just look for Data and AI Talks and you will find me. I hope everybody is enjoying this. There's going to be more podcasts about AI. If there's any questions or things that you want us to get into specifically, feel free to comment. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.